You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, episode 28, broadcast in mid-August 2020. Yes, we're still on lockdown, but we're still broadcasting. Today we present the very first Collectors Roundtable with a very distinguished group of presenters and an outrageous offer of cyber proportions. Don't miss this episode. And now, here's Fraser Hines.
They all say, who is Doctor Who? Where is he from? What does he do? They wonder who is Doctor Who? So I ask you, who's Doctor Who?
Welcome back to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, the podcast that explores the world of Doctor Who collecting, Doctor Who collectors, Doctor Who collections, protection of your collectibles, and all things Doctor Who related merchandise. I am happy to present our 28th episode. I am Larry Van Mersbergen, your host, and I've been collecting Doctor Who since 1981. In 1984, I opened a store in Chicago called Bundles from Britain, one of the first Doctor Who-only stores in Chicago. And we are mentioned in a wonderful book, a book you should have on your bookshelf. It's called Red, White, and Who, The Story of Doctor Who in America. Please get this book. It talks about everything that happened with the world of Doctor Who in the United States. It's from ATB Publishing, and the mention of my company, Bundles from Britain, lands on page 384. And to make it easy, if you go to our website at drwhocollectors.com, you can find a link to that book on the very first page. Our theme song is Who's Doctor Who, composed by Barry Mason and Les Reed, performed by Fraser Hines, who played Jamie McCrimmon in over 117 Doctor Who episodes, the longest-running character and friend of the podcast. I want to thank everyone who became friends of the podcast this past year. You can support us on Podbean, drwhocollectors.podbean.com. You can also shop for some of your favorite Doctor Who collectibles at our eBay store, and you can find it at bit.ly/DWC podcast. Since everything can't be kept here and I often sell duplicates, we try to keep the prices reasonable. Right now, if you act quickly, I have an ex-library copy of the very first Doctor Who hardcover, The Auton Invasion, for sale. This book is very rare, so add it to your Who collection today. You can hear this podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, including Podbean. We are a proud member of the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance. You can find out more about that and more great Doctor Who podcasts at drwhopodcastalliance.org. Be sure to join us at Chicago TARDIS 2020. This year, due to the COVID-19 restrictions, this convention will be virtual, so anyone can attend. I will hopefully be presenting my Doctor Who collecting panel from the very Who room which I broadcast this podcast, which means I can share more items than I usually can carry over to the hotel. I often take a lot of boxes to the convention and often late to my next panel as a result, so this will make things a lot easier. It's worth it. Last year we had over 55 people in attendance at that collecting panel. You can find out more at chicagotardis.com or by visiting their Facebook page. Join us for the best Chicago Doctor Who experience. We have Collection Protection, our featured story, and the most outrageous offer coming up. But first, I want to follow up on some previous episodes. We've had some comments left on our website at drwhocollectors.com, so I wanted to catch up with recognizing a few of those. Andrew Boland writes about episode 26, The Ultimate Collectible. In the interview, Morris actually says he knows of 6 episodes. He also says it's possible episodes exist in Australia. The 6 episodes are presumably most likely in the UK. Thank you, Andrew, for that comment. Byron writes about our first episode, The Dalek Book. I really enjoyed this. It was very informative and fun to listen to. Remember, you can always go back to the beginning or you can listen in any order, but the very first episode, we talk about the very first book ever produced in Doctor Who, the Dalek book. And I walk you through that book very meticulously. So it was fun for me to do, and I hope it was fun for you to listen. Andrew Dexter writes about Episode 8, the John Pertwee Annuals. I really enjoyed this. It was very informative and fun to listen to. Thank you, Andrew. If you would like to hear your comment on the podcast, feel free to leave it at DoctorWhoCollectors.com or on our Facebook page at Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. You can also find us on Twitter at Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. After the break, we feature our first Collectors Roundtable with a group of very distinguished Doctor Who collectors.
I would like to invite you to take a trip across all of time and space.
Join us in the police box as we discuss the worlds of Doctor Who in a completely random order.
We discuss it all. TV stories, audio adventures, novels, nonfiction books, and on and on. I'm your host, Eric Branson. I would be very happy if you join me for the Police Box in the Junkyard podcast.
The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast is a proud partner of the Video Junkyard podcast and can be found on most major podcast platforms including SoundCloud, Podcast Addict, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, and Spotify.
You are listening to
The Doctor Who Collectors Podcast.
Hello, fellow time travelers. I'm Tony Whitt with the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, the podcast in which we undertake the insert adjective here task of discussing in story order all of the Doctor Who novelizations. I'm joined by
Dalton Hughes
and by
Alison Fitzafried.
and we record our episodes twice a month. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Enjoy your travels.
Up there is the scanner, those are the doors, that is a chair with a panda on it. Sheer poetry, dear boy.
And now on the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, we're going to have our very first Collectors Roundtable. And with me is a group of distinguished collectors, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So we'll start with the furthest guest here, Mr. David Russel. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about yourself? When did you start collecting Doctor Who, where you're from, that kind of thing?
Well, I'm from Scotland originally, as you can probably tell by the accent. I live in England now. So I am grand age 48 now. I started collecting probably when I was about, it's difficult to remember because it was because I was very, very young at the time. Probably about 7 or 8 would be start collecting books at that point in time. When the series was on around about then, there wasn't a large amount of collectible activity out there.
That's true. Yeah, it sounded like you started about the same time I did. I was 1981 for me.
Yeah, that would be about right. What we would call primary school, which is junior school here. Yeah.
Fantastic. And then we'll go over here to Mr. Chris DeLuca. Tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Chris DeLuca. I'm from New York. Got into Doctor Who in the mid-'80s. Started collecting around the same time. I was always into collecting comics, magazines, and stuff. So one of my first things I actually even had of Doctor Who was the posters in Starlog magazine.
Oh, yes.
Which even before I found Doctor Who, I had Doctor Who collectibles.
Very good. Yeah, I remember those Starlogs well. And Eluides, tell us about you.
I'm from the Chicagoland area, specifically Northwest Indiana. I've been a fan since about 75. I'm 48, so I was about 3 years old watching with my dad. Actually collecting, I was kind of more of a late bloomer in that because of the market in Chicago. For a kid my age, you just weren't going to really find anything. So it was the Target books that I kind of started getting. And a friend of mine in the area, it turned out he was a Doctor Who fan, and he would go to Chicago numerous times and come back with Target books that he got out there. And then Walden Books near us started carrying them. So I slowly started picking it up that way. So that I would probably say around 85 is when I really started, but it was just mainly the books. It wasn't until I was much older and actually had my own disposable income and products started becoming more available in the area that I could really, truly collect.
And that brings it to the point. That's why I wanted to start a Doctor Who store back in '85, because there just wasn't anything to to get. And in Chicago, there was only 4 places you could go to get Doctor Who items. And if you knew where you were going, you were fine. But some of the comic book stores were late to the game in the 80s, even though the 80s was kind of the pinnacle of Doctor Who merchandising. It really picked up tremendously. So let me go ahead and just ask if you remember specifically what the first Doctor Who collectible you bought and considered it a collectible. We'll start with that. I'll start with you, Chris.
I'm not really sure. I think it might have been an issue of Doctor Who magazine. Like you were saying, it was really hard to find anything Doctor Who related. So since I was a comic book collector, trading card collector, I knew where comic stores were. Certain ones had a few issues of Doctor Who magazine, a few Target books. Other than that, there wasn't really much around to easily find. So it was probably, I definitely remember the first Doctor Who magazine I got, which was a really weird one that the cover had the old people from Shada on it, which is still just a really odd looking cover.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. That's Doctor Who magazine was one of the few things you could get. The comic book store by me had basically a little, like 3 shelves on a wall, and they had Target books. They had a couple of mugs, and they had Doctor Who magazine. So of course I bought a book, a magazine, and a mug. So the magazine I bought was number 72. It had Peter Davison on the cover. Had no idea who he was because we hadn't seen him yet in this part of the world. Sure. Let's go. Eluides, tell us, you remember your first?
It wasn't exactly with my money.
Right. Wasn't with mine either.
It was kind of bad. This was the late 70s. So Larry, you're going to know this from the Chicago area, especially with the drives that Marty Robinson would run on Channel 11.
Sure. I've met Marty.
And there was a great Doctor Who drive that introduced the picture disc. And I wanted that disc so bad. Now, if you pledge $100, I called the number. I pledged my mom's money to get that picture disc. I had again, when you figure out age, I was probably about 10 years old. Didn't understand the concept really of money and how that exactly worked, other than that's how you get stuff. So I had called it in, took care of it. Couple weeks later, a package shows up with my name on it. And my mom's trying to figure out what this is from WTTW, opens it up, and there's also a bill. There's the PBS magazine that they put out monthly of all the shows. And she sees the picture disc and realized what happened. But her and my dad were great enough to forgive me that time, let me keep the picture disc, which I still have. So I would definitely say that is truly my first real collectible that I could consider from Doctor Who. The magazines and stuff much later, but that was my one collectible that really means a lot.
Now, do you remember specifically that particular picture disc? Because I have the same one. I got it from WTTW. Were the Doctors reversed on the cover on that album?
I didn't get lucky to get the reversed.
I have that one. I'm
trying to track that one.
Yeah, they do that. The Doctors are actually, if you got one that was from left to right, Hartnell to Davison, mine is Davison to Hartnell. So they had reversed the Doctor image on a few of those. So those are pretty hard to come by. But that one came from Channel 11. I also have the other one too that I got commercially. But that was a great. Our public television station in Chicago used to give away premiums with your pledges, basically, because there were, that was great. And of course, when Doctor Who was aired, they had raised the most money, so they kept that going. And Marty Robinson was kind of the guy behind that whole thing. And of course, David, tell us about your first collectible. You probably started about the same time I did.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's a bit like Chris. It's difficult to remember exactly which one that. It was one of the Target books, and I think it probably was the Loch Ness Monster. Probably because I'm Scottish, it seemed the most reasonable book to select off the shelf. I still have it somewhere up there.
Yeah.
And so I think that would probably be like that from a small bookshop where my parents had a holiday home. So we travelled into this small town, and there was a bookshop, and it had a lot of books on it, which I hadn't seen because I was from a very, very small.
Wow,
So completely blown away that I could actually like choose one. Which one do you do?
I know it's simply it's amazing. Of course, where you live, David, it's much more prevalent in bookstores to find those Doctor Who books since they were published in England. Over here, it completely depended upon them being imported, and the big import didn't actually happen for Target books until 1985. That was the first year that a company called Lyle Stewart in New York made a deal with W.H. Allen to import books. And so they got the Target books. And a lot of bookstores didn't want them here. They were like, we don't know what this is. We're not sure what it's going to be. But the comic book dealers were starting to pick up on it, especially in Chicago. If you're from around Chicago, Larry Charette was a big name, and he started Comic-Con. Basically, he's the guy behind the Chicago mini conventions, and that grew into the national thing. But he got a hold of a bunch of these books and charged $5 each back in '85, which probably about 10 or 12 today. So he was getting them because he was the only one that had them. Real cool stuff. I'm going to go to the next question here of what do you consider to be your most valuable collectible, whether it be of intrinsic value or monetary? We'll start with Eluides here.
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. Because I've started getting into buying props and costume pieces and set pieces from people I can get in touch with. But probably I'll start on one type of thing to collect, and I try to focus on that more than some of the other side things until I can get almost all of them, and then maybe I'll shift over. And I have a friend of mine, Damian Mays, who's actually done covers for Big Finish Audios. Mm-hmm. And I've gotten to know him over the years and have become really close friends with him. And he has done a series of graphic art prints called basically The Doctor and the Daleks. Like I have one, a couple of them right back here with John Hurt and Capaldi.
Oh, nice.
That are up on the wall right now. And my goal was I want to get an original autograph of every single Doctor. So I've been doing that for years and wanting to frame them with his prints or those that are still living to sign on his print. And I've got most of them. Hartnell and Troughton were hardest ones to get, but I found a dealer in the UK who was very legitimate, got some checking just to make sure that they were correct, and I got myself a Hartnell. So I would say that's probably my absolute most cherished of my collectibles that I've gotten on my own. So.
Oh, fantastic. And so, Chris, your most valuable piece?
I also have a lot of props and costumes from the show. I think the one that is probably, it was one of the first ones I got, is probably the most important one for me, is the Enlightenment helmet and back and chest piece from the spacesuits that they had.
Nice.
I had wound up getting that in a huge lot that I had bought back in the 90s with a lot of other props and costumes and other Doctor Who stuff. It's just the fact that it's totally identifiable. It's only from those episodes, and it's a 3D thing. It's not just like a piece of paper. It's been the one thing that's always been on display throughout the years.
Okay, it reminds me of David J. Howe talks about his Trojan horse.
Yep.
He's got the actual Trojan horse from the Mythmakers in his museum. So fantastic. David, your most valuable collectible?
I think it's for me, it's a collection aspect of them. So because I started collecting the Target books from a very young age, and you would wait for the next one to come out, and I had a period of collecting them all. Then I went to university, and basically my disposable income fell through the floor as it does when you're studying. And so I missed an awful lot of them, and they were very difficult to find back in the days before the internet, etc. So finally making that collection and getting the last book, and so much so to make you laugh. I bought my first house, my first apartment, and on the day that I sealed the deal to collect the keys, I had to send my mother to collect the keys because I was off to the book fair to try and find the last book, which was the Macro Terror. And my mother still, to this day, still finds it bonkers that people should be getting excited about buying a new apartment. No, I was away getting a book. No, I've waited too long. Sorry.
No, that's you know what? That's when it's funny because when I do those collectors panels, and the title of the panel is Doctor Who Collecting Tips from a Professional Collector, and I usually have to start by saying the difference between a professional collector and a hoarder is a fine line. And so it's kind of when and a lot of times you're in a particular place and it's usually an opportunity that you grab something that, oh wow, I got to get that. And for me it's tough to find one. I agree with Eluides here. My probably my most prized one is I have a first Doctor Who annual in mint condition signed by William Hartnell.
Wow.
He signed a bunch of them, just unpersonalized, 1965. I've had the signature verified. I've had that for over 35 years. I bought it at the second convention I ever went to, and I paid $300 for it back in 1986. So it was quite a for the time it was a lot of money, but it's still, I kept it in really nice shape. The other thing that I consider to be a lucky find was I was at a estate sale about 3 blocks from where I live, which is in west of Chicago, Illinois. And he had a box full of these yellow envelopes. And I said, wow, these are kind of neat. So they all said property of BBC. So I went through each one of them and I found one that I really wanted. So I took that and the person said, oh, that's $1. I said, here you go. I probably should have bought the whole box, but I just took the one. And it was an internal BBC envelope that belonged to a man who worked in the electrical department at the BBC. So it included a full script to The City of Death, final revised, Douglas Adams, including all of his electrical notes, the internal envelope, and a note inside about his pension plan and a complete record of his personnel record. So that's how I was able to trace who the guy was. And he had actually retired from the BBC and moved to live with his daughter about 3 blocks away from me and passed away about a year ago. So that was a lucky find, and it's tough to find. I remember I showed it to David J. Howe, and he said, this can't be a full script, but then he realized it was back to back. And he said, only the electrical folks and the production crew got full scripts. The actors just got their parts usually. So getting a full script, and I followed it along with the program, it was really quite amazing that it was the actual final thing. So there's a lot of those things. I don't know if you can see behind me over here, this below the Dalek poster, that's an original artwork of the Radio Times cover from 1972, which was the Day of the Daleks when it premiered.
Oh, wow.
So it's
Frank Bellamy art. I think Frank Bellamy is the artist?
Yeah, Frank Bellamy. That's right. Yeah. Yep. You can't see it on the wall, but I've also got Walt Honath's hand-drawn cover of the second Troughton annual that he signed, and he's no longer with us, sadly.
Yeah.
But just some really nice things that came along over a period of time. Just things that kind of I wouldn't have imagined owning. Very cool. So we'll talk about the next thing here. What do you consider to be the biggest pitfall in collecting Doctor Who? And so we'll start with David here on that from the Scottish perspective here.
I think, okay, there's 2 sides to this. The biggest one is how many people out there, when things come out to be collected, over here we have what we call the V&M stores, which are stores that they've released, and they have limited edition like TARDIS sets, etc. And they come out, and people will go to these stores and they buy them all up, and then they sell them on eBay for ridiculous amounts of money. So that's always a difficulty with regards to, I find that really annoying when you're genuine collectors out there are just wanting it for the pleasure of owning it, and they feel they end up having to spend horrendous amounts of money on it. I refuse, and I've missed out on collectibles because I just bluntly can't afford to spend that amount of money on it. So that's probably the big thing that really does annoy me about things.
I completely agree. Chris, your thoughts?
The most difficult thing about collecting Doctor Who is collecting Doctor Who. In the United States, there's almost no place to find anything. Most other fandoms, you can walk into a comic store, a bookstore, most stores, and get something. Doctor Who has always been the hardest thing to get. Like you were saying, the books and the magazines, those are relatively easy to find at one point. But now you can't go into a store and buy an action figure. You can't go into the store and get anything other than maybe the comic books. Even the magazines are getting hard to find, especially in the last year or so. So it's a fandom that in the United States is just almost impossible to collect. There's lots of things in my collection that I've never seen another one in person other than the one in my collection, because there's just no stores that carry anything.
All right, Eluides?
Just jumping on with the same thing, like what David said, with getting those things like from B&M. I've been lucky to have friends in the UK that they get me the material, whatever it is I want that becomes exclusives out there, and then they'll ship them out here in bulk packages, like the current run of the B&Ms that have just come out. And I'm just waiting for one more Patrick Troughton and TARDIS before he ships everything to me. That's supposed to come in this week, so I'm excited about that. But probably the most relationships in the room. Thank God my wife. I don't know how many other women could put up with me with my collecting because, family does come first, but I do plasma so I can pay for materials for my classroom as I'm a teacher. But then the little extra that I'll have off to the side that I always squirrel away to go towards specific collectibles. Like I know there's somebody out there that may get their hands on a specific script. And I really want that script, I'm trying right now to get one from every Doctor's era. I'm almost there. Jodie. I want a Jodie so bad. I have someone that can probably get me a Jodie and will probably be able to in the next couple of months. So I'm squirreling away a little money here and there to make sure I can afford that. My wife will just look at me and shake her head and goes, well, it's your blood money. So she's okay with that. But yeah, I mean, to be able to have the room downstairs and put all this stuff together, that's always been fun, especially when some people just look and go, they're just toys. Why do you have toys in a glass case? I don't understand this. I see the Funko Pops and I see how people are addicted to those. I hate Funko Pops until my wife bought me a stupid Doctor Who one. I'm never going to buy a Funko, even if it's Doctor Who. Those things are dumb. She gets me one for Christmas. It's her fault. Because then she got me one for Easter. And then one of my kids bought me another one for Easter. And now I've got almost the entire line of Doctor Who Funkos. That's probably been the difficulty is, what do you buy or not buy? Especially when, you got to put money everywhere else and you see something you want so bad and it's like, oh, do I pay for it or not? Yeah,
I hear you. And David kind of brushed on one of my next points here that I'll bring back in was this price gouging, which I honestly was nice to hear somebody from the UK speak about it because it's been mostly aimed at American sellers. But I understand that this happens frequently in England, especially with, I actually did a podcast where I talked about the Big Finish vinyl recordings that go to Sainsbury's. And I actually talked to Nicholas Briggs about that. I actually I wrote into his podcast and he was great to address the problem that he said that they were unable to make a deal with any US distributors because nobody was interested. So what happened was these people were going into Sainsbury's and it says on the product, you can buy one. But then, they go outside, they put a hat on, go back and buy another one, go in a different checkout line. They buy 6 or 7 and the price is not too bad. But then you get to eBay or one of the used record sites and you're looking at $100 or $150 or $200. And I said, well, that's just not right. And Nick Briggs was great. He actually said, that is a horrible thing. Nobody should be doing that. I wish we could do more to stop it. The same thing with the action figures or with things like the sonic screwdriver set, which I was able to get a hold of directly from the manufacturer, but you couldn't find it anywhere else. I mean, Amazon sold out of them pretty fast because people were buying 50 of those, and then now you see them on eBay for $300-$400. It just seems a bit crazy that that's one of my major sticking points, and I talk about it in many of my episodes, that it's been a problem, and some sellers have taken issue with me on that, and even saying, well, it's my right to name a price, and I said, well, it's my right not to buy it, and I'm just going to let it go, and eventually you're going to either lower the price. It's like every once in a while you'll see a copy of Doctor Who and the Auton Invasion, the classic hardcover, which is the first W.H. Allen cover. I do have a copy in my collection. I've had it for quite some time, but you'll see them in various conditions starting at $600 on up. And I've talked with many collectors, and they said the top end of that should be around $300 to $400 at the most. It's not that, expensive, but that's what you're seeing is this. I'm going to clean up with this. I've got this book. I'm going to see what I can get and try to go to the Doctor Who collector and really feast on that desire to obtain something and see if they'll put that out there, which I'm going to go to the next thing here is there an item that you really want to obtain, but you can't find it or can't get it? And we'll start with David on that one.
So I think probably for me, it's an autograph, and unlike you're not really collecting so much of the Doctors. I've been collecting all the companions, and the one that I'm missing, and I would love to get my hands on, is a genuine Ian Martyr, Harry Sullivan photograph. Because obviously too many conventions for that, and he passed away before the big American convention, so he wasn't really particularly signing too often out there. So being able to lay my hands on that one, I think, because I've got pretty much all the rest. I think I'm just waiting for a couple of the new. I'm waiting for Mandip Gill and Tosin Cole to see if I can catch them. But apart from that, I've got everybody else.
Fantastic. I've met Tosin Cole. He's a great guy. just a really wonderful guy. Eluides. I'm gonna get that right.
It's kind of a three-way tie. Like David was saying, I'm trying to get a Jacqueline Hill autograph. I was lucky enough to get an Ian Martyr about a year and a half ago from someone in the UK who had gotten it way back in the early 80s from a playbill of something that he was in. But yeah, Jacqueline Hill is a big autograph I've been trying to get my hands on. A Waris Hussein, which shouldn't be too difficult, I would think. But it just still seems hard for me to be able to get one of his. But then probably my absolute would be the hardcover to the Five Doctors, just because the first Target book I ever purchased was the paperback edition of the Five Doctors. And I would just love, someone's about to make me jealous here.
You're really sick right now.
That is the one I absolutely want. It'd be great to get an Unearthly Child, but that Five Doctors, just because of the sentimentality, I desperately would love to get my hands on one of those. I hate you. So, and unfortunately, I'm putting myself out there saying I desperately want to get my hands on it. So someone will probably come back later and go, I've got it. Let's make a deal. And since you want it so badly, let's talk about up here. So,
well, I'll throw this in here. But back when I did start that Doctor Who store in 1985, I had an amazing thing happen with my partner and I. Gene Smith was my partner back in the day. So we called Lyle Stewart in New York, and we were placing a Target book order because we were getting ready to do the 1985 Spirit of Light convention in Chicago, the big one. That's the one where they had, Pert and Trout and Pertwee and all that. It was amazing. And the guy on the phone said, hey, would you be interested in any of the hardcover editions? And we put the phone down and said, heck yeah, sure. So he said, well, we can't give those away. Nobody wants them. Libraries don't want them. Stores don't want them. So what do you think? And so we thought, well, it's only money. We'll take it all. So about a week later, Gene calls me up. I go over to his place, and 7 large boxes were delivered. Our Target book order was in a smaller box, but we opened these boxes and they were stuffed with the Doctor Who hardcovers. This is one of the books from that haul. We each took a book apiece to kind of do that. And then the fun, I guess the head scratching part of that whole thing is we never got a bill.
Wow.
And we are a business, so we are trying to reconcile our accounts. And so Gene calls up Lyle Stewart and says, we never got an invoice. Oh, let's see, I've got your Target book invoice here, and I don't show any orders for anything else. So I said, well, we talked to this gentleman. Oh, I don't know who that is. So apparently they wanted to dump them. They were one step from going into a dumpster, ripping the covers off and throwing them away. So I thought, wow.
That might have been around the time of the grab bag that they had offered in the back of their books, because I remember ordering from the grab bag and I got like 2 to 3 times as much as what I was supposed to get in there. That's where I got my first hardcovers. I got a signed Peter Haining, the Key to Time book that he had, the second one, not Celebration. I think it's called Key to Time. My brain right now.
There's Key to Time, Celebration. Yeah, there's a couple of those. Yeah, especially the leather-bound editions were very hard to find.
And I was just shocked by that. 3 times as much as what was supposed to be in there. So that makes a lot of sense. Just take it.
Lyle Stewart filed for bankruptcy in the early 90s. W.H. Allen just could not unload. That's why the classic hardcovers started going into lower print runs, which is why the last few hardcovers are extremely hard to find, because they only had a print run of 500. And a lot of them didn't sell, and a lot of them just got tossed. There were rumors of reprints and things like that. So we were the only dealer at Spirit of Light that had these hardcover editions. And we charged $15, which was the actual retail price. We did not gouge them, and we sold out of them in the weekend. I think we did $20,000 in sales that weekend. It was just unbelievable. The other part of that convention I'll share that was amazing was that we were at our table, and John Pertwee walked up to our table, picked up a copy of Moon Boots and said, "Do you think it's a good likeness?" And he picked up a copy of the Cave Monsters, and he's looking at all this. It's like, wow, look at all this stuff. And it was just a lot of fun, and back then they didn't have handlers. They were just wandering around, and that's how I got to shake Patrick Troughton's hand in the lobby. He just walked by me, and I said, "Sir, it's a pleasure to meet you." And he goes, I'm not sure what the excitement is. No one's ever seen my stuff here. So, the first time that Troughton was shown here was at that convention. The Crotons was on the big screen, and he came out afterwards, and it was with him and Fraser and Wendy Padbury and Deborah Watling, and it was just an amazing experience back in the day. And
did you get to witness the water gun?
Yes,
battle?
I saw the Super
I
Soaker.
wish I was grounded from going to that convention, which my mother to this day, even now, which is hilarious. I'm going to be 48, and she still brings up once in a while about collecting. She goes, "I regret not letting you go to that." I had the chance to go with a friend, and she was upset about one of my grades and said, "No, you can't go. Your grade's too." It was like a C-. And she's like, "Nope. You should have studied harder. I'm not letting you go to this." Then he came back talking about the water gun battle that started small.
It started with a glass of water. Patrick Troughton took a glass of water and put it in Pertwee's face, and Pertwee took out a squirt gun, and then Troughton had a bigger squirt gun, and then Pertwee went behind the curtain and came out with a Super Soaker. It was hilarious. But that wasn't the funniest moment of the convention. At night, they did the cabarets, and Norman Rubinstein was the head of Spirit of Light. He was the showrunner of that convention, and he was sitting in the first row, and Peter Davison was on stage with his guitar doing a song, and Norman, I guess, had not had a chance to take a break all night, and he had to use the restroom. So in the middle of the song, he gets up and he tries to sneak out, and Peter Davison stops and says, "Stop! Nobody leaves my act." Spotlight went on him. It was just hilarious. And there were so many great moments. I mean, Tom Baker coming on stage at the end because he refused to go on stage with the rest of the doctors. And I guess John Pertwee stepped down and said, come on, old fellow, get up there. They want you. And he went up there and waved to the crowd, and the crowd went wild. And he just was very, you know, it was just an amazing thing to see, you know, Baker, Troughton, Pertwee, Davison, Colin Baker had just been hired, John Nathan Turner. It was just fun. And before I lose this topic here, Chris, you're, you know, something you really want but can't find.
I mean, most of the things you can find. See, I am a different type of collector. I'm not a completist anymore. I am a very frugal one. If I find something cheap enough, I'll get it. I'm willing to wait. I'll wait years for something, and then, you know, as soon as I find it for the right price, I'll get it. That being said, the two things I would wish I had in my collection is the Dennis Fisher Cyberman figure.
That's a hard one to find. Yeah.
I have a few of the other ones. I have the Tom Baker, the Leela, the giant robot, the TARDIS, but I don't have the Cyberman. I'm a big Cyberman collector too, so not having that is kind of like that. That would be the one I want to get, but I'm not willing to spend the hundreds of dollars that these things go for. The other thing would be the Doctor Who pinball machine. I would love to have one of those.
My brother has
there's actually one available relatively close to me, but it's a little too out of my budget right now.
And that pinball machine requires a lot of maintenance. My younger brother is a video game arcade collector, and he has a Doctor Who pinball, and it took him months to fix the Dalek on the top to be right. It just was too many moving parts, and it was tended to break down. But that's a nice thing. The Cyberman, the Dennis Fisher Cyberman, and even the Italian version of that, very difficult to find. I have a Leela and a Tom Baker, and my Tom Baker is signed by Louise Jameson, Elizabeth Sladen, and John Leeson. Wow. So, I've got a talking K9, but he doesn't talk anymore. The record, it's a little record in there, and it cracked.
Yeah.
And I guess the things that those are very, you know, the Dennis Fisher. You know, I managed to get a War of the Daleks board game.
I got one of those.
A couple of those, and just some things that were. But I think the hardest stuff to find are those minuscule short run Dalek things that came out during, you know, right after the Daleks aired in 1963.
Oh, the Rollikins.
The Rollikins, or it's in within reach here. But I managed to find. I got a Dalek pencil. From 1965. It is an official product. It came in the case, but there are so many of these things that came out that you can't really, you know, even if you're doing a Dalek search, you're not going to find everything because people are like, well, I don't even know what this is. And so many Dalek items came out in the early 60s, and it's just, you know, including the figures and the pencils and there were pins and there were all kinds of things. And so it's going to be very difficult if you're looking at trying to get everything. It's not going to be possible. But that's, you know, I'm happy whenever something comes along that I've never seen before, or somebody will email and say, have you ever seen one of these? I'm like, nope, I haven't. In fact, later in the program, I do a segment called The Most Outrageous Offer, where I find an item that is priced really crazy. And somebody had emailed me an original Tomb of the Cybermen helmet came on the auction block at Sotheby's, and they want $12,000 for it. So they're not going to get it. They're not going to get that. But so how is there a specific way that you display or protect your collection? I know most of us are in our Who environments right now. So any particular things that work for you? And I'll start with David again.
Not really, to a certain extent. I'll be honest. I keep an awful lot of the things still in the original boxes. The TARDIS sets, the B&M sets, I keep them in their boxes. My books are in a fairly deep bookshelf because I don't like the sun to catch them in any way, shape, or form.
Because of the fading, right? Yeah.
Further back, if you can see there, I have to actually reach a good distance in to get to them. But to be perfectly honest, I've never really been the sort of person for the glass kind of display situations. And my collections there's nothing that's desperately valuable apart from my autographs, which are in really good autograph holders and the acidic-free ones that make sure that they won't damage the pictures or the autographs, etc.
Okay, fantastic. Chris, anything special?
No, not really. I mean, some of the older books and magazines, comics, etc. I'll keep in some, plastics with backing boards. For the most part, most of it's just on display, open. Part of it because I'm never really sure how I want to display it, so I move things around, and then I'm always getting new stuff. So it just kind of winds up in a pile of like, where am I fitting that in? So it's an ever changing display.
I hear you there. I'm doing the same thing because I'm only limited to these 4 walls here. So, Eluides?
I've been lucky that I've tracked down like display cases, a comic shop that had gone under a few years back. I got one of their display cases that I put all my character options. Well, each of the doctors you can see, and that's all that can really fit in there. Everything else is stored in boxes, and I like to shift them around. School got rid of one of their old 1970s style library display cases, a glass case that I jumped on for $50. It's huge. It's like 5 feet tall by about 6 feet wide. That I have all my Big Chief Studio figures in, and a couple other things like the 13 Doctor Collector set. So I just put them all in that. The Target books, because of you, Larry, I've been looking through Bags Unlimited so I can I'm at the point that I need, just because of dusting. It's gotten to be so much of constantly dusting that it's just easier. I need to get those bags to put all the books in. Hardest one then is even the magazines because the size shifts.
Yes.
It's getting harder for more the newer in the last 2-3 years worth of Doctor Who magazines. They're such an odd size. They no longer sit the magazine size comic bags. So Bags Unlimited, again, I'm trying to hopefully get the right size to put the newer ones in for saving.
A shameless plug because I've been using Bags Unlimited since 1981, and they've been around forever. And they have a great selection of good size bags for archival long-term storage, which is why it was great to find bags that fit the hardcover editions perfectly. It's not folded over like the old days comic book bags, and then you had this big flap that you had to fold over. Sure. This is actually called a jumbo paperback bag, but it fit the 6x9.
I need to write that down. Jumbo paper.
Yeah, it's called the code on it is SBJ, by the way, real easy, and these are great. And I know I helped a couple of folks in the UK get a hold of these because I know they are in the United States, but they do ship to the UK. I was finding, because everyone was like, well, where did you find those bags that fit the hardcovers? I'm like, well, they're at Bags Unlimited, and bagsunlimited.com is the website. They're not a sponsor; they're just one of my favorite people. The only bags that I've not been able to find that would fit the old Radio Times. I recently picked up a copy of Radio Times from Spearhead from Space. It has John Pertwee on the cover, and it's a different size than the one with 5 doctors from 1983, because those have changed, kind of like the American TV guides used to be digest sized, and now they're magazine sized, and now I don't even know if they print them anymore. But it was amazing. Several editions of the Radio Times that had Doctor Who on the cover, and not very often, but those are really hard to fit. The other one I had to fit was a full-size Cinderella program that had Peter Davison, Anthony Ainley, and Sandra Dickinson. I have one folded, one unfolded, and the unfolded one was almost impossible to find something to fit it, to keep it flat. And those were hard to find flat because a lot of them were folded even at the theater. So it's a challenge to find the right fit for protecting. And I don't use any special display cases. I basically have, you can kind of see behind me, it's just a shelf in areas. I've got the annuals behind me. The hardcovers are to my left, and the Target books are kind of out of camera range and all that, but just something where I can find things, and I've got locations in case I need to, because right now I'm helping, if you're not listening to one of the podcasts I frequent is the Target Book Club podcast, and they're getting ready to start the Tom Baker era, and he did not have copies of the junior Doctor Who books. to compare those. So I had both the Brain of Morbius and Giant Robot, and I sent those over to them they're going to take pictures of the pages so their panel can read them, and because they're not around anymore, and just so there's a lot of fun things to do. One of the things that I still have is, how it all started when I joined the Many Companions of Doctor Who back in the day. I still have my membership certificate.
Oh, wow.
And as you can see, this was hand drawn. This was drawn by the late Bill Eubanks. He was a member of the club and a professional artist. And he was able to capture, these are all images of the Doctor from the Starlog 20th Anniversary magazine that he just basically hand drew. And I was companion number 117 out of 300, I believe. So those were hand drawn back in the day, December 8th, 1984. So some great stuff. And so right now, just to kind of open things up, are there any open questions that you'd like to ask?
I was just wondering about, obviously, the difference between items here in the UK and items in America, because obviously one of the things that's coming out here is the vinyl editions, LP editions of the original stories, and I think the collections are beautiful. They're beautifully done. How, because vinyl is having a huge, big resurgence here in the UK, and I just don't know how big they are over there.
Well, actually, they're being sold here because one of the things that helped with the vinyls was Amazon was carrying them. And so nice thing about Amazon is that if whatever your login is for Amazon, it works on the American site, the UK site, the French site, the Japanese site. So I was able to order, let's say, the Dalek Master Plan audio on vinyl from Amazon UK. I also have the Abominable Snowmen and the Tomb of the Cybermen and a few other things. I'm really a big vinyl person myself. Actually, one of my rare vinyls is I got the full album of Bulla Makanka. They did Doctor Who's Gonna Fix It. And I've got the full LP from them. It was side 2, track 1. It was just called Doctor Who on their album, and that was a huge hit for them that BBC Records bought. The other one is Jim Burrell. I don't know if you know who he is. He was a folk singer, and he did a song called The Doctor. Mm-hmm. And I've done it on one of the podcasts. I have his album too, because he didn't do a single with that one. And that's in the back, it's got a drawing of the TARDIS and the big scarf around a figure. So yeah, vinyl was a huge, it's actually pretty huge here as well. I think vinyl turntables have come out again, and I know Big Finish was putting out a lot of their stuff on vinyl. So absolutely.
Yeah, they're releasing, I think, the Time Lord Victorious set, which is coming out with that. I think there's 2 of them are coming out on vinyl.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Anybody else? Open questions?
What about product companies or product lines for you guys? Is there any that you like in particular? For me, the Product Enterprise, I love all the stuff that they came out with. I wish they would have continued on. Just the fact that they all talk, and they're huge sizes in some of them. It's one of the ones that I wish I had everything of. Besides Eagle Moss, I would love to have everything of too.
Yeah, I love Eagle Moss. They're one of my favorites. I as far as product lines today, I haven't really settled on anyone. Of course, Big Finish is one of my favorite lines. They were single-handedly responsible for saving Doctor Who. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, when things were just not looking good anywhere. In fact, I'll never forget asking Sylvester McCoy, how did you feel when they canceled Doctor Who? And he said to me, I can't tell you, there are small children in the room. But as far as there are so many different companies producing things. I have a Doctor Who, Jodie Whittaker Doctor Who purse that came to me that they call it a satchel bag, but it's a purse. But that was produced by a one-off company. And then, of course, there were offshoots of the BBC. I mean, the first book was put out by Souvenir Press, which didn't really exist. It was a made-up name from the BBC's book division because they didn't know what to call it. And then eventually World Distributors became the annual publishing company, and now it's BBC Books. Even the original Moon Boots and Dinner Suits was put out by a different book company, and now BBC Books has has those again. So there's so many different companies out there that are, I asked David J. Howe, how many companies produce Doctor Who? He says, well, how much time do you have? It's there's so many. Eluides, any open questions?
Not really open questions, no, other than I need scripts. I'm so jealous of you when I remember when you were telling that story of how you found the City of Death, and I'm like, that's like one of my all-time favorite later stories from Baker, and I just love that story so much. I can't get enough of it, from the humor and everything else. I love Duggan.
Yes.
With just knocking everybody out. That's his answer to everything. I just love that. I just watched it the other day, but when you said that, I'm like, oh, here I am trying to get scripts, and you came across that. That's just such an amazing find, when you can come across something like that without even realizing it, which is awesome.
That's why I pull over when I see an estate sale.
Yeah.
You never know. I mean, even if I'm like, I'm not really interested, but I got to take a look. And not related to Doctor Who, but another estate sale, I was going through the record bin and I found a really nice find. It was the Beatles' very first album, Tony Sheridan and the Beat Brothers.
Wow.
From 1962. It was it had My Bonnie on it, which is what got them recognized in England. And I thought, well, I hadn't seen one of these. It was on a German label. It was a German release. And this guy had it in his collection. It had a sticker on it, but I said, I'll take it for $1. No problem. The record was in great shape. And you never know what you're going to find. It's I know one of the things that Gene Smith did after I sold the company back to him is he took a trip to England and visited every yard sale and every bookstore, and and he found a set of let's see, from the Chase, the mechanoids.
Yeah.
Little mechanoids. A woman had a whole box of these mechanoids in her yard, and she's like, how much for the whole box? And she's like, why would you want those? He's like, I want them. And I think he paid a few pounds for them. So that's the whole idea. It's sometimes you're looking for something, sometimes things find you. And
so
that's
Larry, related to what you said, obviously, about finding that script for basically was it $1? Did you say? Was that
$1? Yeah, $1.
With you guys, have you guys ever? What's your best deal? What's the best thing you've found at a price that you didn't expect?
That's probably it. That script was probably what I had no idea that was going to be. In fact, I'll grab it off the shelf here and show you real quick.
Well, my best deal was what I had mentioned earlier, where I had bought a doctor's collection of stuff. It was a bit pricey.
I don't know if you can see it there,
I wound up... It got delivered to me. It was about 4 or 5 boxes of stuff, a box full of just off-air recordings of the show, multiple props from Doctor Who, Blake 7, some original artwork, magazines, everything. That's probably the best deal I'll ever get, and I'll probably chase that deal for the rest of my life.
Probably mine would be just getting lucky. Sounds terrible in a way, off somebody up like an estate sale. I really despise you. And someone had contacted, Alien Entertainment. I constantly get things through. That's where I've got my Big Finish subscriptions through is them. And then the other large store, Who North America, I also try to support all the time with both shops. And Who North America had ended up being contacted by somebody whose father had passed away. They didn't know how to get rid of all these things that he had in a storage room of all Doctor Who. He had almost every single Doctor Who magazine. And so that came in. They knew at the time that I was trying to track down magazines, and made a great deal with me to be able to purchase about 300 issues and average maybe about $3 a piece, if that, to be able to get them all. And they worked a little deal so I could pay it off in a couple months, because they knew I was good for it. I was going to do it. So to me, that was a great deal to be able to just fill it in like that. So that's probably one of the best. And then of course, getting my hands on a Hartnell autograph, which Probably was the most expensive autograph I have ever paid for. And according to people, I still got a pretty good deal at about $350. Granted, it was a pre Doctor Who autograph. It was from an autograph book of all kinds of people this person had collected over the years there in the UK. And one of them just happened to be his. And I believe it was 1962. He had dated it as well. So, and to me, that's probably one of the better ones to get it for as cheap as I did for his perfect to condition autograph as well.
Mm. Absolutely. And his autograph is very difficult to find. He also stopped signing autographs later in the 60s. So, and just a few after that, and not because he wasn't very public after he left Doctor Who. There was not a lot that he did in public. Patrick Troughton signed a lot of autographs back in the day. John Pertwee as well. I've got a Moon Boots signed by John Pertwee. And he signed it right in front of me. So it was pretty cool. Tom Baker, I get a greeting card from Tom Baker every year at Christmas time. He's a fun guy. He's a wonderful man. It looks like we lost David. Could be a technical glitch there, but anyhow, I want to thank my panelists for joining us today on the Doctor Who Collectors podcast, this first Collectors Roundtable. So we had with us Chris DeLuca, David Russel, and Eluides Pagan. So thank you, Mo. Well, actually, let me get David back in the room here. We lost you for just a second there, David.
Yeah, I have no idea what happened there. And sorry, Eluides, that was really rude. You were just telling me what that. I think I just heard you say, obviously, getting Hartnell's autograph was a big thing for you.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, the Hartnell autograph and.
Not rude.
Oh, that's okay. Actually, we're just trying to wrap up. I'll start this again, but I want to thank my group here today, Mr. David Russell, Chris DeLuca, Eluides Pagan, for joining us today on the Doctor Who Collectors podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The money to be paid from your private purse.
No!
You speak.
And now it's time for the outrageous offer. Today's outrageous offer was shared with me by Tim Drury, and we thank you for your contribution. It hosts a Doctor Who original Cyberman helmet, and it looks like from the Moon Base or Tomb of the Cybermen, and it was basically from the Longleat convention. It's been removed from sale by the auction house. Great effort by drawing attention to it. Utmost respect, Omega Auctions, for listing and investigating genuine concerns and upholding strong principles. The starting bid was £2,000. There's some doubt as to whether or not it's authentic. So be careful when you look at original props. Usually there's some kind of an authentication, or if they're purchased from the celebrity themselves, just be really careful. Back in the early days, I remember being with a friend at the 85 Spirit of Light convention, and he really wanted John Pertwee's green velvet tuxedo from, I believe it was the Green Death. If I'm wrong, I will correct that. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. But it was actually put up for sale, and the money was going for charity. And John Pertwee himself authenticated the tuxedo as the one he wore in the episode. And he did buy it, and he still has it. So be very careful out there. If you have an item that seems too outrageous or even too good to be true, drop us a line. You can share it on our Facebook page at Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, or shoot us an email at drwhocollectorspodcast@gmail.com. Put in the subject line outrageous offer, and I'm happy to share those on the podcast.
Sad, really, isn't it? People spend all their time making nice things, and other people come along and break them.
And now for collection protection. Protecting your collectibles is very important. And as always, I like the products at Bags Unlimited. They are not a sponsor. but they are my personal preference for collecting all of my collectibles with regard to Doctor Who. You can reach them at bagsunlimited.com or at 800-767-2247. They've added a couple of new products to their lineup in the last few weeks, and it concerns long-playing records, LPs or vinyl records. These are brand new products. So they are calling them Box Pro Snug Fit LP Jacket Box Protector. It's made from 12 mil crystal clear archival semi-ridge polyester. It has a slit lock top closure and a slit lock bottom closure. Tongue tuck closure flaps are located on the same side of the box. Boxes come with a removable protective film to prevent scratches. Measure the record jacket before purchasing. The dimensions are 12 and 7/16 by 12 and 7/16 by 3/16 on the inside. So that's a brand new product. You can get 5 of those for $12.50. They also have the thick LP box set box protector, which is 13 by 13 by 1 1/8, which might fit some of your box sets. Probably not going to fit the Dalek Master Plan. That's over, I believe, 1.5 inches. But this might protect that. I'm going to measure it and find out. And this is the same exact thing, except it's a little bit bigger. And you can get 5 of these for $13.50. So if you're into the record business, they have a brand new or if you're selling in the record business, audio cassettes. They also have a brand new poly bubble mailer, which mails 1 audio cassette, measuring 3 7/8 and 6 3/4 on the inside. Outside, it's 4 by 8. You can get 25 for those for $10. Again, Bags Unlimited Incorporated. They've been around for a long time. I've been using them since 1981. I prefer them.
Where to now, Ace?
Home.
Home?
The TARDIS.
Yes, the TARDIS. There are worlds out there where the sky's burning, where the sea's asleep and the rivers dream. People made of smoke and cities made of song. Some where there's danger, some where there's injustice, and somewhere else the tea's getting cold. Come on, Ace. We've got work to do.
Thank you again for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast today. A special thanks to our guests, Chris DeLuca, David Russel, and Eluides Pagan, for joining us on our first roundtable. I hope to hear you next time. Now, we're going to close out our podcast with a little audio from 1979, the group Mankind and Doctor Who.